Welcome back to another episode of Stress Less with Dr. SOS. We're continuing with part 4 of our special series called The Talk. If you watched part 3 of The Talk last week, you know I had the opportunity to have a conversation with 2 beautiful brown women who are my friends and moms to amazing children. We shared conversations from a mother's perspective, and of course we went over time because the conversation started getting real good. Well, we kept the conversation going and held the last couple of questions for today. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, or perhaps a bottled water, and join us for the second half of this conversation with Angel Brown and Charlita Harvey. And AB, you have any experience with it personally?
Yes. You really want to hear mine?
I do.
Okay, good. Yeah, because maybe they'll edit this part out.
We'll see.
In 1995, I was in college and I was in New Orleans, and I was bartending in the French Quarter, and I was doing that as a part-time job. And as I was leaving the garage, a gentleman passed me in a car, silver car. I never forget it, silver car, gray silver car with tinted windows. And I think there were other people in the car. And as I was walking down, they blew the horn. It scared me. I jumped back and they used the N-word. Back then I was like 20. So I had no fear of anything.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, I know. My mama thought I was crazy because I hauled off and hit the man in the driver's seat. And that was the last time I put my hands on somebody. Okay, so that's my testimony. Yay. But that was the last time. So I can't run for political office. But the point is,
I'd vote for you.
I have had
Slugger. Vote for Slugger.
I've transparency. So I've had those experiences. My son, however, I think that we as parents did the best we could. At least I know I did. I did the best I could, which I still question, was it enough? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, we as you mentioned, we started to evolve. Well, we became middle class. That's what we did.
Absolutely.
We became middle class. And so we ended up in the suburbs, right? Our children started going to private school. And my son was one of those children. And he was one of 5 Black children in the entire elementary school. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of against that whole, that school. That was where the family went. So we went there. Mind you, he was one of 5 in elementary and his cousin was the other one of 5. So we went to that school. And at the age of 7, Anthony gets in the car and he goes, "Mom, I don't want to be brown anymore." And so I almost ran off the road. I kept it in the middle of the road and I said, "The devil is a lie in this car." And he went, "Huh?" And I went, "Baby, don't worry about it. You going home and you go right. I love being brown at least 100 times. And so we had the whole lesson of I love being brown. We stuck it on the refrigerator. We had to have a conversation about our history, about who we are, and how it, as Charlita mentioned, how important we are, and how it's okay to be in our own skin and love the skin we are in. And so this idea of not liking the brownness, of the dirtiness, of being called out of my name, of my son being viewed as a threat at the age of 14 because of his size, his stature. That's problematic. And it's something that we have to address, but it starts with us. It starts with our children. It's not the education system's responsibility to teach our children who they are. Absolutely. It's not our church's responsibility to teach our children who they are. It's ours. And if we don't know our history, if we're learning about Juneteenth for the very first time this year, we need to go back and study our own history, middle class us, and then take it back to our children.
So even in what I'm hearing you say, Angel, with having to have the talk with your son, I think that when non-Black people, when people who are not Black or brown, are thinking about the talk, and I talked about this in a previous episode, a lot of times that talk is the sex talk. For us, we have said, we have to have this whole different kind of talk. And a lot of times that is, especially with our boys, but also with our girls too, as they're growing up, the talk about police brutality and just how to respond when you're in a situation with an adult, and particularly with law enforcement. But that's not the talk in and of itself. It's such a comprehensive packaging of who we are and how we are. So part of your talk, Angel, started with your son when he was 7 about the brown skin he's in. And the fact that he didn't feel comfortable because of something that happened that someone said or did, and that he really wanted to not be in that skin anymore. Are there any other components, Charlie, of the talk that's aside from the specific racism issues and the police brutality that you've had to include with your children so that they have an understanding of identity and how to move in this world?
More so with my daughter than my son, we went through a period where I had to have the self-love talk about her hair, because, a lot of Black folks say I got Indian in my family. Well, I actually do legitimately have Indian in my family. And so,
girl, no, I was kidding. Right.
And so what that meant was, my daughter started to become really self-aware, and I would wash her hair and do her hair and wash my own hair and do my hair. She would look at my hair versus her hair. And one day she very pointedly asked me, "Mommy, why does my hair not look like your hair?" And I had to explain to her, well, genetics, your dad's genetics were a little stronger than mommy's. He overtook the situation.
Strong Black man.
And hair was one of the things. And she took it all the way down to she has looked at her brother, who both my children have my eyes, but my daughter got her dad's short eyelashes. My son got my long, full eyelashes. And
that's not fair. I'm just going
so unjust. Right. And so, but with her hair, we went through a period, and, the little non-Black girls at school would, "Oh, can I touch your hair?" And some of them would be really enamored with it. And others would be like, "Well, why is your hair like this?" And why, and she got asked the question enough that she started to not love her hair. Mm-hmm. And so I had to kind of refocus the importance of the strength of one's hair. When I was young, my great grandmother said, "You never cut your hair is your strength." And when I finally did at 16, I went from all the way down my shoulder, almost to my elbow, to a little teeny bit up here. And I was not spoken to for almost a month. So, I was in a lot of trouble because I thought I was grown. Right. And so we had that talk, and everything went well for a while. Well, flash forward, she's 14 now, and I've had to revisit that. Because, we have used to relax her hair. We've embraced her natural hair, and I love her big full afro. And she has for a while hated it, and is just now really starting to accept, because it doesn't matter what I say to her as her mother, but when she gets a compliment from you, Dr. Scott, or Angela, or someone else, anyone other than the parent who is obligated to tell her how beautiful she is, that has kind of reinforced. And so, now she's really standing in the beauty that is a part of her heritage, of who she is and what she is made of, that popping melanin skin and that big full hair. We literally had a white person come up to us in the grocery store not too long ago, and she was like, "Can I just say something?" And she's like, "I love your hair." And neither myself or my daughter were, of all the things she could have said, that's not what we saw coming. Nice. And it caught her attention, oh, not that it gave it any more value, but it was yet another other who was saying it, and kind of reaffirmed what I, as her mother, had been telling her. Love the curves of your hips. Love your big full afro. People buy weave trying to get what you have naturally. Right. And so we've, had to revisit that as she's, developing into a young adult. So that's a whole other framework of the talk that, I've had to have as a parent.
Mm-hmm. And can I just jump in and just say it will come, because you're exactly right. So let me add to Anthony left the whole I don't want to be brown anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I drilled way too much Black history into him, because when we left the private school and I sent him to a magnet school, he walked out and went, Mama, I'm with my people. Mind you, he's like 9. And he just loved and embraced the people that looked like him. And we continued that Black history and how great we are. Because I read recently, and I want to make sure we're really clear, and I know we are, but anyone who's listening, please hear me. Our history didn't start when slavery started. Absolutely. Or when slavery, we are kings and queens. Absolutely. And when we embrace that, when we embody that, and when we teach our children that, they're going to love the skin that they're in. But I will say to your daughter, Charlita, there are a lot of people who have bought our hips and our backs
and our lips
and our lips
and our noses
and our noses,
and they burn themselves.
And matter of fact, that is why suntan companies exist now.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So let her. She needs to love every part of her and who she is. Because I love every valley and every curve that every Black woman has, because it's what makes us great. And again, there's no better form of flattery than,
imitation, as it were.
Tries to imitate what we do.
Well, here's something that you reminded me of in speaking about Anthony saying, I'm with my people.
Yeah.
One of the other experiences or frameworks of the talk that I've had to have was, and unfortunately this happened in my own family and the ignorance that came from it, where I had relatives say to me, well, your children don't talk Black. Don't sound Black, because my children speak very proper English, and that was a whole other kind of conversation that I had to have that I wasn't ready for. First of all, I'm gonna just say it, pissed me off. Like, that's not cool. It's hurtful when that's coming. It's bad enough when I have to deal with that outside of my front door, but in the realm of my environment with my family, having family say that to me, your kids don't sound Black, they don't talk Black. Like, what does that even mean? And so having to navigate that as well was a whole other arc of the talk. I think some people, whether it was, a comment that came from relatives or straight or whatever, people, with the microaggressions. Oh, you don't sound like you came from humble beginnings. You don't look like, you don't present, well, what does that mean?
It's interesting that you say that, because the question of, do you, why don't you sound Black? Is always a topic, especially for our educated young Black children. And it's interesting because those who say it, oftentimes, it's not that they're not educated, but I question their intellect regarding the true meaning of what Blackness is.
Absolutely.
You can't say that broken language, which they've termed ebonics, thank you whoever chose that word, you can't say that is now Blackness and how Black people are supposed to speak, because the truth is that is not how we speak. Isn't whether we're Black enough or not. The question is, what makes us Black enough not only is the color of our skin and who we are, but how we are raised and how much knowledge we actually have
about our Blackness.
Exactly. So until you have enough knowledge to talk to me about LBJ or who invented the red light, or who invented the sewing machine or the iron board, or who even invented maxi pads, until you can talk to me about that,
have several seats.
My Black.
That was the stance I took when it was said to me as well.
Very good. Very good.
Well, I think that both of you bring up another significant point for us as we're trying to educate our children, and we're having all of these various iterations of the talk with them. Charlie, I can relate very well to your daughter not really hearing from you as mom the fact that she's beautiful because you're mom and you're supposed to say that. And I remember having conversations with my mom as a young adult and going through all of the fussing and fighting with my hair, with my hips, with my lips. My lips were out and then they were in and they were popular. And, having going the back and forth of trying to love me based on someone else's definition of me and who I should be. And so walking through that whole process of identity development has become one of the reasons why I make it a point to share with our kids, other people's kids specifically, how beautiful they are, but also other brown and Black and white women. I mean, if you see something that's beautiful about a person, I make it a point to acknowledge that because the world is going to come at us, and it has, particularly as brown and Black people, really, really hard about how we look. And recognizing that when mama says that, that's nice, but you my mama, so you love me, you gonna say it anyway. So being the person to come alongside and say to the younger version of the me's, to the younger version of the Jasons that, my gosh, you're so handsome, or you're beautiful, or I love your hair, or, oh my goodness, I love your complexion, it's so deep and chocolatey, to remind everyone that, we are beautiful.
Yeah.
We are beautiful. But until you can see that and embrace that for yourself, then it doesn't matter how many times someone else will tell you. You will do a lot of things to look less like God intended you to look and more like the world says you should look. So I'm going to be even more conscious and aware of having those kinds of conversations with our young folk and our middle-aged folk like us and our older folk, to remind each other that we are exactly as he's made us in all our unique shapes, in all our unique shades, with all of that curly hair over there, Angel Brown, and all of that is exactly who he's called us to be. And it's a part of having this talk with our kids.
I hope you found our conversation helpful. If you're looking for good reads for your kids on topics like embracing their uniqueness, check out What I Like About Me, a book celebrating differences by Aaliyah Nolan, and Exceptionally Weird, Embrace Your Uniqueness by 13-year-old Raven Saray. I'd like to share this thought. There's a saying that goes, the more I learn, the less I seem to know. That saying is likely an iteration of Albert Einstein's famous quote, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. As I continue to have these talks with my friends, family, people in my community, and leaders from all walks of life, I'm realizing there is so much that we don't know. There are things we don't know about our world, about one another, and even about ourselves. What I do know is that if we want our world to become a place where there is equity and equality for all, the talk is required. And to that end, I say, y'all, let's keep on talking. Thank you for watching part 4 of the talk in our special series of Stress Less with Dr. SOS. Until next time, choose to live well.